I've been in love with my best friend for years. So, of course, she started dating someone else. But then, she lost her memory and told everyone I was her boyfriend. Just to mess with her, I went along with it. Then I decided to make the lie a reality, to cherish the time I'd stolen. And that's when her memory came flooding back. I walked into the hospital room, a bouquet of apologetic-looking daisies in my hand. Stella Song, the girl I'd grown up with, was sitting up in bed. The second she saw me, her face lit up and she launched herself out from under the covers. I instinctively stumbled backward, but it was too late. She was already clinging to me, her hospital gown crinkling against my jacket. "Jake, where have you been?" My brain blue-screened for a solid 3 seconds. "Wait," I managed, my voice hesitant. You know who I am." Stella laughed, a bright, familiar sound that twisted something in my gut. "Of course, silly. You're my boyfriend, aren't you?" Thump. I heard the sound and glanced toward the door. Brandon White, Stella's so-called new boyfriend, stood frozen in the doorway. The fancy fruit basket he'd been holding was now a casualty on the linoleum floor. A few perfect, overpriced cherries rolled out, and I felt a pang of regret for the wasted fruit. I'd never been able to stand Brandon. The guy was my shadow, always trying to one-up me in every class, at every party. For the past 2 years of college, he was the main reason my friendship with Stella had deteriorated into a Cold War. She was always defending him, always taking his side. Seeing the look of utter shock on his face, a devious little idea sparked in my mind. I wrapped an arm around Stella's waist, pulling her closer, and pointed a thumb at Brandon. "If I'm your boyfriend, then who's he?" Stella tilted her head, giving Brandon a once-over. She scrunched her nose. "I don't know. Who is that?" Brandon's handsome face clouded over. Still, he managed to keep his voice steady. "Stella, it's me, Brandon White. You don't remember me?" Stella disentangled herself from me and plopped back down on the bed. She took a freshly peeled orange segment from her roommate, Leah, and started swinging her legs. "Honestly, I don't remember anything." Leah pushed her glasses up her nose and nodded gravely. "It's true. She didn't even recognize me at first. I told her a bunch of stories about our dorm, and she just gave me a blank stare." Stella nodded along, munching on the orange. She then turned those big, guilt-inducing eyes on me, her expression turning pouty. It was a look that could melt stone. "So where were you? All these strangers have been coming and going for 2 days." I was getting scared. She ducked her head, the picture of vulnerability. Brandon couldn't take it anymore. With a sound of pure frustration, he spun around and stormed out. The moment he was gone, Leah leaned in close to Stella. "Look, that guy's a jerk, so you're better off forgetting him. But, are you sure about Jake? The two of you fight every time you're in the same room." Leah's words planted a seed of doubt. Stella looked at me, her confidence wavering. "Jake, you're really not my boyfriend." I looked at that sad, confused face and thought about all the times she'd driven me crazy. Just last week, she'd marched over to my parents' house to tell my mom I'd been up all night at a friend's place playing video games, which earned me an hour-long lecture. Payback time. A wicked grin spread across my face. I stepped forward and ruffled her hair. "Of course I am," I said, my voice smooth as butter. Leah, who was usually the quiet, studious type, looked at me in disbelief. "Jake, you can't. You're taking advantage of her." But Stella wasn't listening. She grabbed my arm and beamed at her friend. "See, Leah? My boyfriend's here now. You should get a class. Oh, and can you bring me back some takeout later? Love you, bot." Leah shot me a look that could kill as she walked out, shaking her head. Stella just smiled sweetly up at me. "Honey, I want another orange. Can you peel it for me, honey?" The word sent a weird jolt through me. This girl, who usually looked at me like I was something she'd scraped off her shoe, was now staring up at me with wide, trusting eyes. All the fight was gone from her face, replaced by a softness I hadn't seen in years. I sighed. How could I say no? I grabbed an orange from the basket. "And when I get out of here," she said, already scrolling through TikTok and letting out little bursts of laughter, "I want you to make me your famous sweet and sour ribs." A sense of dread began to creep in. Maybe, just maybe I play myself. Stella's injuries were minor, but the amnesia was a mystery. To help her recover in a familiar setting, the doctors discharged her early. Her parents had to fly out of the country for an urgent business matter, and since she only remembered me, and they'd known me my whole life, they entrusted her to my care. Just as I was contemplating a cross-country escape, my doorbell rang. There was Stella, suitcase in hand, a massive grin on her face. To make my commute easier, my parents had set me up in a small condo near campus. It was my sanctuary. I couldn't believe she'd found it. "I thought you had amnesia," I said, blocking the doorway. "How did you find my place?" She leaned against the doorframe with a movie star smile and raised an eyebrow. "What are you talking about? Of course I know where my own boyfriend lives, right?" Good point. Defeated, I stepped aside. She breezed past me like she owned the place, flopped onto my couch, and immediately pulled out her phone. I'm gonna chill for a bit. Can you put my clothes away? Excuse me? Who did she think she was ordering around? You can unpack your own clothes, I said, my tone sharper than I intended. She lifted her head and fixed me with those big, watery eyes, a look that made my skin prickle. But you're my boyfriend. Why wouldn't you help me? I wanted to punch myself. Why'd I have to go along with this? Now I was trapped. After I'd begrudgingly put her clothes away, I noticed a grocery bag on the kitchen counter. Did you order something? I asked. Her smile was dazzling. Yep, I'm craving your sweet and sour ribs. So, I had Instacart deliver the ingredients. I peered into the bag. Sure enough, there was a package of raw pork ribs. You know, if you wanted ribs, you could have just ordered from that place down the street. They make great ones. I can get them on DoorDash right now. My words were cut off as she launched herself at me, wrapping her arms around my neck from behind. Her warm breath tickled my skin, sending a shiver down my spine and scattering my thoughts. You dummy, she murmured into my shoulder. I don't want their ribs. I want the ones you make. You're my boyfriend. How could you not cook for me? She had a point, damn it. Staring at the package of ribs, a wave of memories hit me. Stella and I hadn't always been at each other's throats. After we both got into Northwood University, we'd had a brief, peaceful truce. After years of growing up together, pushing each other to be better students, I'd fallen for her without even realizing it. Then came that day. I'd spent all afternoon making a batch of my ribs to surprise her. I found her outside the library, but she wasn't alone. She was taking a bouquet of roses from Brandon White, a sweet, dazzling smile on her face. Something inside me shattered. I turned on my heel and walked away, not speaking to her for days. When we finally saw each other again, I couldn't stop the sarcastic, biting comments from spilling out. She gave as good as she got, and before long, we were the campus's most infamous pair of enemies. Stella had always loved my cooking, but after that day, I never made a single thing for her again. The distance between us grew until we couldn't even pass each other on the quad without trading insults. Only I knew the truth. I was heartbroken. The girl I'd loved for most of my life had chosen someone else. The memory brought a fresh wave of irritation. I stood up, looking down at her. Stella, think really hard. Am I actually your boyfriend? She looked up at me, her face a mask of confusion. You're not. Of course not. I burst out. I'm the person you can't stand. Your boyfriend is Brandon, the guy you scared off at the hospital. I watched her expression crumble, and my own heart clenched in my chest. I loved her, it was true, but I couldn't lie to her anymore. In the next second, she looked up at me, her eyes welling with tears. But we're still best friends, right? We grew up together. That part's not fake, is it? I still want your sweet and sour ribs. How had I never realized what a manipulative little foodie she was? With a huff, I grabbed the groceries and stomped into the kitchen. I was just starting to prep the ribs when there was a knock at the door. Before I could say anything, Stella had already opened it. The voice from the living room made me freeze. It was Brandon. You really don't remember me? Stella, I'm your boyfriend. This guy, Jake, he's just taking advantage of you. He sounded like he was barely holding on to his patience. Stella didn't answer right away. She glanced toward the kitchen, then back at Brandon. I'm sorry, she said, her voice firm. I really don't know you. If something happened between us that gave you the wrong impression, I apologize, but I have no memory of it. Brandon took a step forward, reaching for her hand, but she pulled away. His face was a picture of defeat. He pressed his fingers to his temples. Jake is the last person on earth you'd ever want to be with. If you ever get your memory back, you're going to regret this so much. I saw Stella look in my direction again. This is it, I thought. The power of the supposed boyfriend is too strong. But her next words made my jaw drop. Even if we weren't dating, Jake and I grew up together, she said, her gaze unwavering. I've been in love with him for years. I know exactly what I'm doing right now. Whoa, why was my heart suddenly hammering against my ribs? That night, Stella devoured the ribs and 2 whole bowls of rice. I had to admit, I was jealous. How could someone eat that much and stay so thin? And so, Stella became my uninvited, amnesiac roommate, which is how I ended up sleeping on my own couch for a week. Finally, the new semester started. The first day of classes, the looks we got from people who knew us were priceless. Seeing us walk together was like seeing a cat and dog holding hands. It just wasn't natural. Stella, however, was completely unfazed. She pointed at a shop across the street. Ooh, I want bubble tea. Let's go. I saw Brandon standing right by the entrance to the tea shop, his face a thundercloud. I felt his glare like a physical weight on my back. But the memory wiped Stella didn't care. She grabbed my hand and pulled me right past him without a second glance. To get some space, I told Stella, I needed to focus on a research project and move back into my dorm room. That worked for a while. Then came my birthday. I was walking back to my dorm when I heard the commotion. Down on the lawn, Stella was waiting for me, holding a massive bouquet of flowers. A crowd had gathered. Did hell just freeze over? Someone yelled. The queen of campus is chasing after her arch-nemesis. I couldn't take the stairs. I pushed through the crowd, grabbed Stella's arm, and pulled her away. What is all this? I hissed. You're my boyfriend, she said, her expression perfectly sincere. I wanted to surprise you. Isn't that normal? I looked at her earnest face, and something inside me just gave up. Maybe this was it. Maybe I should just take this gift, this stolen time, while she thought she loved me, and enjoy every second of it, even if she hated me when she remembered. This time, I didn't pull away. I leaned in and gave her a huge hug. Thank you, I whispered. This is the best surprise. Her small, soft hands wrapped around my back, and I breathed in the faint, sweet scent of her shampoo. That day, we did everything I'd ever wanted to do with her. We ended up at the beach, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink. Stella leaned against me, her head on my shoulder. Isn't this perfect? She murmured. We've known each other our whole lives. I've loved you for so long, and you finally accepted me. My heart ached, the feelings mutual, but then my brain caught up. Wait, who said I accepted you? Why don't you ask me again when you're not an amnesiac? Suddenly, she jumped up. Hey, remember that old barbecue joint behind our high school? It's not far from here. Let's go right now. And just like that, she was pulling me by the hand, running toward the part of town where we grew up. As I watched her hair fly behind her, I remembered. In high school, even when we were academic rivals, competing for the top spot in every class, I would always sneak out during study hall to bring her back a box of ribs from that exact place. Even with her memory gone, she still remembered that. The good times didn't last. Brandon took the fight to social media. He posted a long, rambling story accusing me, his supposed friend, of taking advantage of his girlfriend's amnesia. To prove his case, he even uploaded a video. It was grainy, clearly filmed in a dark bar, and it showed Stella, or someone who looked exactly like her, pulling him in by his tie and confessing her love. Because the song and Vance families are pretty well known in Northwood, the story blew up. Within an hour, it was trending on Twitter. The song heiress and the Vance heir have been enemies forever. As their classmate, I've seen it with my own eyes. So Jake Vance has been in love with Stella Song this whole time? Is that the takeaway? That poor Brandon guy finally gets the girl, and she loses her memory. Tragic. Soon, the internet was flooded with posts from Team Brandon, all calling me out. I stare at the comments, a bitter taste in my mouth. How is any of this my fault? I wasn't the one who made her forget him. Now, I couldn't even leave my condo without a local blogger or wannabe journalist shoving a phone in my face. The questions were relentless. How long have you been in love with Miss Song? What will you do if she ever gets her memory back? What will I do? Probably crawl into a hole and die. I was getting angry, trying to push my way through the small crowd when my little troublemaker arrived. She was standing at the edge of the mob, holding a bag with my breakfast, a look of surprise on her face. Jake, she called out, trying to push her way toward me. No, stay back. I yelled, but it was too late. The vultures had spotted their other target. They swarmed her, microphones and phones thrust in her face. Miss Song, is it true you have amnesia? Do you really not remember, Mr. White? Stella froze, looking completely overwhelmed. She turned toward me, her eyes pleading for help. A fierce, protective anger surged through me. I shoved my way through the crowd, pushing people aside. In the chaos, I heard someone shriek. My heart stopped. I pushed harder. Stella had been standing on the top step of the condo entrance. In the frantic shuffle, she'd lost her footing and tumbled down the short flight of stairs, her head hitting the metal handrail at the bottom with a sickening crack. I scrambled down to her, cradling her in my arms as I fumbled for my phone to call 911. I glared up at the reporters who were still filming. Are you happy now? I roared. Get out. All of you get out. If anything happens to her, I'll sue every last one of you into oblivion. The crowd backed away, lowering their phones. In my arms, Stella's eyes fluttered open. She groaned, touching the back of her head. Then her gaze focused on me, a flicker of confusion in her eyes. After a long moment, she spoke. What happened? Jake, what are you doing here? My stomach dropped. She remembers. I rode in the ambulance, a frantic mess, and called Leah on the way. She met me at the hospital, and the look she gave me was ice cold. I thought you said you'd take care of her. How could you let this happen? What kind of job are you doing? I ignored her accusations. My voice was flat. I think she has her memory back. Leah's tirade stopped mid-sentence. She stared at me, her mouth hanging open. What? I sighed and handed her Stella's purse and phone. Here's her stuff. You should go be with her. When she wakes up, I'm probably the last person she'll want to see. Leah took the bag without a word. I turned to leave, but she called out after me. Jake, for what it's worth, I think you should know. Brandon was never her boyfriend. What? I looked back at her, confused, but just then a nurse opened the door to Stella's room, and Leah hurried inside. Through the small window in the door, I saw Stella glance toward the hallway. I quickly ducked out of sight, my heart pounding like a drum. Not her boyfriend? Then what was that video? It didn't matter. Even if Brandon wasn't in the picture, she still thought I was a jerk. She probably hated me. I walked back to my condo in a daze. Inside, everything reminded me of her. Her sweater was still draped over a chair. Her favorite mug was in the dish rack. The last few weeks had been a fantasy, a dream I'd stolen. And now I was awake. I spent the rest of the day and night wallowing. Phone off, world shut out. The next morning, a call from my best friend, Mark, finally broke the silence. Dude, where are you? Home. I mumbled into my pillow. Sleeping. What's up? Sleeping? You can sleep at a time like this? Have you seen Twitter? Stella Song just dropped a bomb. And you, the other main character, are taking a nap. What? She has her memory back. What does she have to do with me? I grabbed my phone. The names Stella Song and Jake Vance were trending at #1, a bright red viral tag next to them. My hand shaking, I tapped the trend. Pinned to the top of the feed was a post from Stella's official account. It was a long, heartfelt post, an essay really telling the story of a girl and the boy she grew up with. That boy, of course, was me. In Stella's post, the whole truth came out. Brandon had never been her boyfriend. That day I saw them with the roses, she had asked Brandon to pick them up for her as a favor. It was my birthday, and she had been on her way to surprise me with the flowers and a dinner reservation. When I saw them and stormed off, she, being just as stubborn as I am, decided to let me stew in my jealousy. The misunderstandings spiraled from there. As for the video from the bar, it was a deep fake. The White family's business had been in trouble for years, and they were desperate for a connection to the well-respected Song family. Brandon had been hanging around Stella, hoping to win her over. He'd used her anger at me to drive a wedge between us, and when that wasn't enough, he'd resorted to faking a video. Stella's post laid everything bare. It made Brandon's earlier accusations look pathetic and malicious. The internet's verdict was swift and brutal. So the one taking advantage of the situation was him, using a deep fake to slander a girl? What a scumbag. This guy's a real piece of work. Thank God these two are on the same wavelength, or he would have gotten away with it. I bet he hired those reporters who mobbed her. This dude is straight up evil. I didn't read anymore. All I could think about was Stella, still in hospital. I scrambled out of bed and rushed to the kitchen to make her an apology breakfast. Thank God, I still had ingredients in the fridge. I packed up a container of her favorite pan-fried dumplings and was about to change into something that didn't scream. I just spent 24 hours moping when my front door opened. Stella stood there, holding a giant, spiky durian. You're already out of the hospital. I stammered, feeling like my brain was still buffering from last night's lack of sleep. She set the fruit down on the counter, her eyes landing on the takeout container on the table. Were those for me? Before I could answer, she'd opened the container. Her eyes lit up. Oh my God, how did you know I was craving dumplings? Yours are the absolute best. She reached in with her fingers. Hey, go wash your hands. I finally snapped out of my stupor. As I watched her happily munching away, I felt like I was in a dream. For weeks, I'd been terrified that the moment she got her memory back, she'd be gone. She caught me staring and laughed. You didn't actually think I'd ditch you once I remembered everything, did you? In your dreams, Vance. I finally got you. I'm not letting go now. I reached for a dumpling, but she playfully slapped my hand away. I sulked. Well, you and Brandon were a rumored item for so long. You never denied it. I thought you were really together. She reached over and poked my nose with a greasy finger, her smile radiant. So you were just jealous. Our families were thrilled that we were finally together. Brandon White, however, was not. A few weeks later, we were all at a private room in a restaurant for my dad's birthday dinner when the door was pushed open. In walked Brandon and his father. The Whites and our two families used to be close, but years ago, my dad and Mr. Song had cut business ties with them over their increasingly shady practices. Seeing our stunned faces, Mr. White simply pulled up a chair and gestured for his son to do the same. Come on, Brandon, sit down. Show your future father-in-law the gift you brought him. Brandon sat in the empty chair next to Stella. Stella, he said with a pained look, why didn't you tell me it was Mr. Song's birthday? Stella was speechless for a moment, shocked by their audacity. Brandon, she finally said, her voice tight. We were never together. You know that. Mr. White just chuckled and offered Mr. Song a cigar. Come on now, David, he said. Remember when we were just starting out? Both our wives were pregnant. You remember what we said back then, don't you? My dad's expression darkened. He glanced nervously at Stella, who looked equally unsettled. I took her hand under the table and squeezed it. That was just talk, Bill, my dad said carefully. We were young. The kids are grown now. They have to make their own decisions. Mr. White waved his hand dismissively and pulled out his phone. He scrolled for a moment and then hit play. A noisy, tinny recording filled the room. It was clearly recorded while my dad was drunk, and the contents were predictable. A slurred, heartfelt promise to join their families in marriage, a pact made over their unborn children. Mr. White smiled, a smug, predatory look in his eyes. So, David, the Vance name has always stood for integrity. You're not going to go back on such an important promise, are you? He nodded at his son. Brandon quickly produced a framed painting. Mr. Vance, he said with a slick smile, I know this is one of your favorite artists. I managed to acquire it for you. A birthday gift. And if you agree to my marriage to Stella, I have even better gifts waiting. Stella shot to her feet, her face flushed with anger. The rest of the dinner was painfully awkward. The Whites were the only ones talking, while the rest of us sat in stony, furious silence. Stella might be in love with me, but I wasn't about to let her be bullied. The moment we got home, I was on the phone with Mark. His response was quick. The White family's reputation had been circling the drain for years. They had burned too many bridges. Brandon had only gotten close to Stella because his father had pushed him to, and he'd successfully used my own jealousy to drive a wedge between us. The thought of someone manipulating my Stella like that filled me with a cold fury. They clearly didn't know who they were messing with. I was still figuring out my next move when the Whites imploded on their own. Frustrated by my father's refusal to honor the old pact, they made a desperate play for an alliance with the most powerful family in the state, the Crawfords. Their daughter, to this day, remained unmarried. What Brandon didn't know was that she had a long-term boyfriend, an MMA champion. When Brandon showed up to try and impress the Crawford heiress, her boyfriend beat him to a pulp. A video of the beatdown immediately went viral, turning Brandon into a laughingstock. That was just the beginning. The floodgates opened. Tabloids and online sleuths started digging, and all sorts of dirt on the White family surfaced. Brandon's father collapsed from stress, and Brandon was forced to take over the failing company. He had barely settled into the CEO's chair when the story of how he tried to strong-arm our families into an engagement hit the news, along with a reminder of how he'd hired reporters to harass Stella. The power of an internet mob is a terrifying thing. Someone dug deeper and discovered that Brandon had been the one to cause Stella's initial accident, having deliberately poured oil on the ground where she was walking so he could play the hero and rescue her. That was it. I couldn't hold back anymore. I released everything I had on Brandon's history of cheating and womanizing throughout college. The internet went into a frenzy. Mark, my resourceful friend, even uncovered a darker secret. Brandon's father had originally married his way into money, cheated on his wife after Brandon was born, and was likely involved in the suspicious circumstances surrounding her death. With all their illegal dealings and shady history exposed by the online furor, it didn't take long for the authorities to get involved. The White family was finished. On my way back to the condo that night, I stopped to pick up all of Stella's favorite foods and a good bottle of champagne. It was time to make this official before someone else tried to steal her away. I opened the door and was hit by the smell of smoke. My heart leaped into my throat. Stella, I yelled, rushing into the kitchen. There she was standing amidst a cloud of smoke, staring in horror at a blackened, unrecognizable lump sizzling in a pan. I'll take it from here, I said, grabbing the pan and rushing it to the sink. I turned back to her, unable to stop a grin from spreading across my face. Stella Song, you are banned from this kitchen. For life. Our engagement party was held shortly after we graduated. Leah was there, of course. When I went to find Stella to make the rounds and greet our guests, I overheard her conversation with her best friend. Look at that blockhead, Jake, Leah was saying. If you hadn't used that amnesia-scared force's hand, would he have just stood by and watched you end up with someone else? Stella laughed. Don't tell him, but your plan was genius. It forced us both to finally be honest. After all those years of fighting, one of us had to break first. I would be so mad if I wasn't so ridiculously happy. A slow smile spread across my face. This clever, infuriating, wonderful woman. I pushed the door open, catching the guilty expressions on both their faces. I winked at Stella. Come on, honey, I said, holding out my hand. Let's go say hi to our guests.